Broadcasting live from the Pro Business Channel studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's time for Capital Club Radio, brought to you by Flock Specialty Finance. Please welcome your host, Chairman and CEO, Michael Flock.
Thank you and good morning. We're absolutely delighted today to welcome Andrew Dietz, who's the co-founder and partner of Creative Influence, a sales-enabled public relations and content firm that works especially with business-to-business clients. He's also founder and managing partner of Creative Growth, a B2B marketing strategy and business development firm. He's also author of dozens of articles, a blog about creativity and innovation called Idea Monger, and 2 books, including The Opening Playbook, a professional's guide to building relationships that grow revenue. Andrew is a graduate of University of Michigan School of Business and Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. He's lived in Atlanta for over 30 years, though his clients span across the United States and globally. Andrew joins us today to talk about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, creating revenue-generating relationships through content, and about building a creative life. A quick disclaimer before we start. Andrew has been working with my team at Flock Specialty Finance to help us better tell our own story to the marketplace. So we know Andrew well. We love working with Andrew and his team. Andrew, how did you get this motivation to do startups when you were with companies like Ziff Davis and Bell South, huge companies that people don't think are really terribly necessarily creative? Now, Ziff Davis was publishing, but Bell South, my God, what a monstrous, conglomerate. How did you get this spark to do these kinds of things in big companies?
Well, first of all, Michael, thanks for having me, and I love your theme music. I know our audience couldn't see, but I was dancing, and since you couldn't see, then I'm a fantastic dancer.
Okay.
I think we all are creative and entrepreneurial, but not all of us allow that natural instinct to come to the surface. I was born to parents who were very creative. My dad was trained as an artist, and he did start his own business. When I was still in high school, Inc. magazine first published its first issue, and I probably was the youngest reader of it at that time. So there was something about creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship that had caught my attention early on, and I think in part it's because I kind of came from that heritage of father who had those instincts. I never thought I'd work for a larger corporation. I always had interest in the smaller, more entrepreneurial startups, something of my own. So it was a surprise to me when I entered a company like Bell South. And you're right about Ziff Davis. Ziff Davis was an incredibly entrepreneurial organization, as they had to be. They had publications focused on special interests, hobbies, and ultimately, when I joined, they were focused on building a computer magazine division. So these are all areas that change constantly, meaning that the organization had to be constantly thinking about what was next, how to grow and sometimes end and sometimes restart or start new publications. So that the environment was inherently entrepreneurial. At Bell South, you might not think so, right? You worked at AT&T for a while, didn't you?
Yep.
So I was fortunate in joining Bell South after I left the publishing industry. I left because I was here in Atlanta and I wanted to stay, but I was from New York, and that's where the magazine publishing industry was.
Right.
But I met the woman who became my wife, and she's from here, and that made it hard to leave. I ended up, doing something that was a mistake. And I'll come back to your question in a minute.
You made a mistake?
Yeah, occasionally. But I'll come back around to your question about big companies innovating. But let me start with this sort of diversion that led me to Bell South, and it was that I convinced myself that a business could be just a business. I didn't have to do what I was passionate about. right, or what I was interested in. And so to stay here in Atlanta in the late 80s, when there really wasn't, there was certainly no magazine publishing business here and very little media of substance, short of CNN, where you could work if you wanted to get $10,000 a year. I ended up joining my wife and my father-in-law in a family manufacturing business in Cartersville, Georgia. So here I am, a little preppy kid from Connecticut and New York, driving my... And that was quite a lesson to me about really doing, follow skills and abilities. At least for me, a business isn't just a business. I have to do what I'm passionate about. And for me, that was, again, where entrepreneurship and creativity intersected, and at the time where, for me, media intersected. And that was in the then early 90s, the world of interactive media. Back then, it was pre-World Wide Web. So interactive media meant CD-ROMs and online services. And it was through that consulting gigs at interactive media companies that led me to Bell South. They were starting at the time one of the early incarnations of interactive television, and I joined out of business school as a director of content. And then when they started BellSouth.net, I became director of marketing and then ultimately VP of marketing for that. So I had the good fortune of being in the intrapreneurial, as you put it, area of a big company, and they pretty much left us alone because most of the executives who had grown up in the phone business, they didn't really know a lot about what was emerging in the realm of interactive media. It was new and different, and they felt.
So you were different. You didn't fit into that.
I was different. I'm a subversive in a Brooks Brother clothing, and so I didn't think that I would be accepted at a Bell South, but that was a really great environment for me. I say, especially early in your career, you want three things: network, name, and knowledge. And I was able to gain all of those things while helping Bell South build and launch what became BellSouth.net, and then the DSL, or the broadband. Now it's regular speed, but back then broadband over ADSL, technology was the advance. So big companies may not be inherently entrepreneurial. The bigger you get, the harder it is. That said, increasingly, those kinds of organizations are trying harder than ever to bring entrepreneurship into their businesses, both enhancing their culture, sometimes trying to drive that level of creative thinking throughout the whole organization, sometimes trying just skunkworks operations, sometimes, especially here in Atlanta, creating innovation centers. We've got to be one of the leaders now of hosting innovation centers in the country. And they're big companies. AT&T has one here.
Right. Andrew, is that creativity in business can also be very, very strategic. It is really kind of the power behind innovation. And so I'm kind of thinking out loud with you here. What did you see differently about management in, let's say, the for a brief time, and then manufacturing or management at Bell South, both in their core business, but then what was different about management in the unit that you were that was launching the new service? What is the difference? I guess that's my question. And do you have examples of differences in management in a creative environment versus something that's been status quo for 50, 100 years, like, AT&T, Bell South?
One thing that is common across both environments and is more important now than ever is the ability to solve problems creatively. That may be different from the bigger strategic creativity and innovation that we typically think of, such as how do we position this company, how do we change our business model to compete? But it starts with inculcating in your people, whether they're factory workers or whether they're white-collar executives at a big phone company, the ability to ask not just how, but how else. How else could we get this done? Well, the machine's done tore up, or we can't do that because our traditional systems won't handle such things. Well, how else could you do it? What could we do? So that's creative problem solving, beginning to wrestle with or challenge oneself and the organization to ask, what if we did it this way or that way? What if we took this immovable obstacle and went under it or over it or around it? Or maybe that isn't really an obstacle. Maybe it's an opportunity. It's that kind of thinking that, from a management standpoint, ultimately I learned was what both engaged the teams that I led and energized me. And at first, though, of course, as I said, I've learned that the hard way, because that certainly wasn't my approach. When people would say to me early in my career, well, it can't be done, that would get a kind of hostile rise out of me. And I would push back hard. And, as with time and experience, and I may still do it, but with time and experience, I've been able to ask people to play along with me and engage with them and collaborate with them in that kind of how else thinking rather than pushing back.
So creativity then, in terms of management, it's a different way of problem solving and also decision making then?
Sure. Creativity is usually thought of as, or innovation as just the top of the funnel, meaning let's come up with a lot of ideas. But innovation is applied creativity, and innovation requires decision-making. It means prioritizing. And in today's world, of course, priorities change minute by minute. So we live these days in our business world in improvisation, not in a linear sort of static realm. So both ideas and making decisions about them is an ongoing process.
Right. Well, the other word that kind of stands out in your history and your bio and in your work, and frankly in the book that you wrote, the Opening Playbook, the guide to building relationships that grow revenue. You do so much work in the online world, and our relationships, our personal relationships, human to human, just as important as they were.
What is that?
Yeah, exactly. Because we're all online now. And, we're doing the fintech lenders, and we're funding folks that buy their debt. But so much of those relationships are online, and it's not personal relationships. So has the industry and I call it, the electronic world of creativity, has that changed the definition and meaning and value of personal relationships?
Well, I hope not.
I mean, do you have to rewrite the...
I hope not, and I fear it is. But question, even what are the opportunities? And what I see happening is, and really almost has to happen, look, digital doesn't replace human interaction, and I hope it never will. And what I see businesses doing now is focusing more than ever, actually, on building great customer or client experiences. Capabilities not to replace, but to support and enhance those relationships. So, and new technology, whether it's artificial intelligence, VR, and a whole bunch of other acronyms, which I really don't know what they mean. No, I do. But these things are coming together to place interpersonal, live interactions, but to supplement them in a way that is warmer and more personal than they've been before.
Okay.
So you may go on with a chat bot.
Right.
And it seems like it's real, right? And that's good and interesting, but it's not instead of. Those tools are now being in shipbuilding.
Right.
Or if I've liked something somebody's written, or if the ideal way to use LinkedIn or any tool like that is to, again, as an enhancement, as a supplement, as a way to give yourself leverage to stay connected to more people before in a more intimate way. Ultimately, though, those relationships fade unless there is some human interest. I've now got about 3,000 LinkedIn contacts. And I am about to challenge myself to see if I can cut that in half.
Cut it in half.
Because, over time,
it's not possible to have personal interactions with 3,000 people.
Right, and a relationship within that environment changes the value of for me, and it changes the interaction with LinkedIn for those who are asking me for help.
Right.
Well, there are a couple of aspects to it, right? There's the buying and there's the collecting, but I think historically, there's been a reputation of transactional rather than relational business dealings in this field. And without question, as I look at you and your business, you've built tremendous relationships, as has your team, with people in the market. And so it does exist, but there is a reputation you're dealing with. And that reputation certainly is translated to consumer relationships when it comes to collections. So, and it could be that that's just the way the market has to be, because you're dealing with a tough situation. You're dealing with debt that needs to be collected and is past due, et cetera. But I would ask, what would happen if there was a bit more of a relationship, more relationship thinking applied to the industry, both on the part of an organization like yours and the debt buyers, as well as the relationship between collectors and consumers. What would that look like? And could it happen? And if so, what? So again, ask, how else could we do that? And it could be that, it's just the way it is. And it could be that there is an angle that or an approach that could change the game. What I like about what you guys are doing is really looking at continuously to kind of upgrade the professionalism and the relational aspect of the business that you're in.
Well, interestingly, what we're seeing is that technology is creating new solutions for collection companies to actually talk to the consumer with more focus, because they have more information about that consumer and the debt that consumer owes. So ironically, it's the technology that may even deepen the relationship with the consumer and add more value to create more successful transactions, successful calls,
right,
because of the data that's being collected and how that is with multiple collection agencies. So it's interesting irony. Technology may actually enhance the communication with the consumer.
Absolutely. I think you're right. That was trying to say earlier, one of my clients is a major technology consulting and implementation firm that's affiliated with some of the big software companies and so on. And I was just, we do a lot of writing articles and blog posts and content creation for them. And I am I literally last night just finished an article about exactly this. What's the infrastructure for building more intelligent customer experiences? If you've dealt with some banks, friendly, it feels personal issues aside. I think your example is a terrific one, and I really think that's what increasingly companies can do. The buyers of this technology better relationships with customers. So I may be an optimist or a Pollyanna in this, but I see the positive aspects, not the automaton distancing that could occur.
Now, you mentioned content, and you've got a couple companies. One is called Creative Influence, which you say is a sales-enabled PR and content firm. Mm-hmm. What does that mean, a sales-enabled PR and content firm?
Well, often, first of all, let me describe content in my, this is a little bit different perhaps than some people. It's a broader definition than typically people might think of. Content is often viewed as, well, what we're doing now. We're creating content by having a discussion that will be available online. Or we could write articles or white papers. That's typically, something like that gets written. That great. Yeah, well, what good is that doing you? Mm-hmm. It's great for your ego, and maybe it lifts recognition of the brand, but the world of business doesn't have much patience for just branding anymore. They want to say, well, not just what the link is between content and branding, but what's the link between content and business development? The background is, as much as it's been marketing, it's really been on from the perspective of sales and business development. Mm-hmm. And that's how I started my company, Creative Growth, to focus especially on those that don't have professional sales staff. Right. Those organizations that typically business firms that have experts, mm-hmm. and they don't want to sell, mm-hmm. and they don't even want to market, mm-hmm. but they have to. So how do we help them? So that's how I started Growth. I joined forces with a colleague, Natalie Springfield, who has a PR firm called Influence PR. Mm-hmm. She was dealing with a similar audience. Mm-hmm. We decided that she had chocolate and I had peanut butter, and we should put them together and make a Reese's cup. Mm-hmm. So we took Creative Growth, came up with Creative Influence, which is using content, using ways to add value to our clients' customers, and building that from the beginning that it links to conversations, mm-hmm. conversations that drive business. So the book I wrote, Opening, is the Opening book is really sort of at the core of that idea of sales. And what we're trying to do is not just lift a brand, but create more of the right conversations with more of the right people, in the right way, with the right context, more often.
Right. So this ties to these 6 C's that you talk about a lot: the connections, curiosity, conversations, creativity, context, and consequences. That's a lot to remember, but
it is. In the song, the ABC, I never got past the C. So, and don't make me sing it now, because that wouldn't be okay. But well, first of all, back to the idea of relationships. It all starts and ends with who we know and how well we know them and what kind of willingness and ability we have to help each other. And the more of those kinds of relationships, high willingness and high ability to help, that we have in our inventory, the better. Conversations. Relationships are built, we could say, one conversation at a time. Great conversations start with curiosity, genuine curiosity. What do what's interesting about you to me that I want to ask you about, right? And content is another one. That may be 7 C's. I don't know. Sale of 7 C's. There you go. See, I'm a marketing guy, so we have to have things. Oh boy. Never mind. Never mind. I won't go on.
Okay. A lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and we've talked a lot about strategic concepts and the importance of creativity and innovation. But let's get down to some brass tacks, Andrew. And you work for some big companies, but then you started your own companies. With your own companies, did you ever have a moment where you felt like you were failing and that your company wasn't going to succeed and that you were a failure yourself? I mean, were there any life-changing moments throughout your journey, or was it pretty smooth sailing all along?
Well, Michael, to answer that question accurately, it's a matter of degree. I may have that feeling every day, but to different degrees. And so to some degree, that level of fear is a motivator. Sometimes it can kind of reach a pinnacle and be a stopping point or a point of revelation and direction change. For me, it happened, it's happened a couple of times, but the one that probably is most notable was after leaving Bell South, I helped to start a venture capital fund. I was the junior partner to a mentor of mine.
Is that Mellon Ventures?
Well, it became a part of Mellon Ventures, yeah. We used their money, their people in their office. This was Net Ventures, but we were essentially their technology and new media investing arm. I ended up going in and joining one of the operating companies, one of our portfolio companies, as the CEO. And it would have been, huge success now. It was probably an early company, but this was, way before our time, its time in 2000. And so we had a great technology in search of a marketplace. And that does not make a business necessarily. Mm-hmm. So as the bubble started to burst, our runway shortened. And we ended up selling the business, and it was a reasonable exit. I can't retire, but our and it may even have been somewhat of a sideways deal. But right. our investors got money back. Almost all the employees were placed with the company, and they had a great experience. For me, it was a failure, and I took it very hard and very personally. And it led me to look back again and say, what am I doing here? I mentioned earlier my manufacturing industry experience, where a business is just a business, not for me.
Right.
Again, I had gone off track. My skill sets are relationship management, marketing, creativity and innovation, writing, things like that. But I had gone off course and gone into the realm of technology and finance. I'm neither a technologist nor a financier. Mm-hmm. I can appreciate technology and understand its implications, and I can stuff, but you don't ask me what's under the hood. And I'm certainly not a financier. So I moved out of my comfort zone significantly, and that back to what I think I do best, and what ultimately led me to creative growth and creative influence.
So the lesson learned was stay in your comfort zone? Is that it?
Well,
that kind of conflicts with your notion of creativity and
comfort zone
re-engineering.
Comfort zones, I would describe it differently, because I certainly place myself constantly outside of my comfort zone. But the tools I use to move comfort zone are the skills first that I'm best at. Was it Marcus Buckingham who had that? What was the name of his book? First, Use Your Strengths, or something like that.
Right.
And that's really what I've tried to do. It's rather than shore up my weaknesses, really play on and bring to the world some value through what I do the best. Mm-hmm. And using those tools, those are the best for me to solve problems. So when I get stuck, when I get out of my comfort zone, my first order of business is, what do I have? What assets do I have that I'm best at and enjoy that allow me to reinvent this situation?
So do you apply these same lessons then to some of your consulting with big firms and smaller firms? And what are some of the other common denominators you see with entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs in terms of success or failure?
Michael, the starting point is, I think, maybe even how we started the conversation earlier, the idea of creativity and innovation as a strategic step first. So I start almost every engagement by asking, what is this client famous for? What do they want to be famous for? What's their positioning, to use a marketing buzzword? Meaning, what do they do well? What do they enjoy doing well? And who cares? Not that, who cares? Nobody cares. But who cares most? Which clients are going to be most receptive to those strengths? And how do we help that client get in front of more of those people? So that theme is consistent no matter what. It's essentially strategy before tactics. Mm-hmm. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War. He said,
Yep.
Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Yep. So there was Stephen Ross was an executive who owned parking lots in New York in the 1970s, and then he ended up buying Time Warner. Mm-hmm. My father, was fascinated by him, as my father worked in New York in the media business, and cut out an article for me that was about Steve Ross and his path to success. And Steve Ross said, 10% thinking, 90% doing. Strategy before tactics. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean you overthink, but you got to put a little time in.
Right.
To aiming before firing.
Right.
That stuck with me.
Yeah. No, I'm a believer of that too. Andrew, as we wrap it up here, what's next for you and creative influence and creative growth? And do you have any more books that you're working on?
Yeah, I do. Well, let me. So what I found a lot of joy and success with clients in helping them create content that builds conversations, meaning content that builds relationships, and those relationships ultimately drive business. We do that in all kinds of different ways, from a strategic level to a very hands-on tactical level. And I don't want to stop doing that anytime soon. I really like that. Personally, I've tried to blend personal interests with business interests, especially in professional services, but I think this is true anywhere. It's harder and harder to separate the two, or it's a false duality to separate work from life, let's say. The more you can integrate those two things, the better. And that is, in some ways, a creative life when you can do that. So for me, and again, it's why I've spending more time doing content creation, because that's what I like to do in my spare time. Right. My wife says, "Why, you're writing the book? How are you going to make money off of that?" I'm like, "Honey, some people go play golf. This is the crazy stuff I do. What can I tell you?" So in addition to writing a book about business, my first book was, The Last Folk Here, was a book about creativity, actually. It's a book about outsider folk artists who create despite incredibly difficult circumstances. Why? Because they have this innate urge, and they let it out. So the book I'm working on is similarly themed. It's about living a creative life. It's about balancing doing and thinking, balancing getting quiet, and letting things come to you, and conversely, getting active and driving towards things. So what's the balance? Early in my career, I spent more time acting and grasping and reaching for things without enough quiet time and allowing things to step forward. And I still haven't perfected the balance, but I'm better at it, and so life is better.
But you're bringing creativity to life, essentially.
Right, and that's where I think I can add value, and that's what the next book is about.
Right, you're doing that for you personally and for your clients. It's a wonderful story.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm really doing it for me personally, as the first book was. But what I found is that by kind of indulging or expressing those personal interests, it's allowed me to build great business relationships. Because people say, "Really, that's weird. Wait, tell me more about that." Wait a minute, you're not just a marketing geek who, is out to sell stuff? No, I'm actually a human being. Right? Well, don't ask my wife about that.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful creative snapshot of how you built your career, your advice about sales-enabled relationship marketing, PR, content. And thanks, too, for your stories about yourself and your clients. And we look forward to your next book and your next entrepreneurial adventure. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael.
Okay.
Thank you for joining Michael Flock and his guests on the Capital Club Radio Show. For more information on future interviews, please visit us at flockfinance.com. This program is brought to you by Flock Specialty Finance, where clients are provided knowledge and insights to help them grow their business in complex and risky markets. Flock is more than a transaction.
at Lee Cantor for a while, who I think you guys had some relationship with. Because using these kinds of tools as business development.
Well, I thought it was
very,
very good. We could have gone on forever. So.
Yeah.
No, I was taking notes and I was sending out some tweets and just I mean, correct me if I'm wrong or if I was on the right track here. One of your opening statements, I think you reiterated it. I don't know if I paraphrased it or if it's close enough, but I liked what you said. The comment was, I said Michael Flock and Andrew Dietz talking about building relationships while building revenues. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's just like
building relationships that grow revenue.
That grow revenue.
It's not instead of a personal relationship,
right.
But it's like, so a lot of my clients, the individuals, well, Alex is an example, right, would say, well, that's my friend, so I can't talk to them about business. Oh, wait a minute. Who, if they're your friend, don't they want to know about your whole life, including your business? And what?
As long as it's not Amway, I'm okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I haven't hit one of those in a long time.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. Yeah.
If it's not a diatribe, just a nonstop pitch, whatever. But
right.
But
it's not that. It's like, hey, tell me about you. How's your company going?
I mean, I called my brother yesterday. It was his birthday yesterday. We're both entrepreneurs, right? So we're talking about birthday and family and so forth. But the conversation moved over to Rich, how's the media channel working? I'm asking how his business is working. That's just, I mean, as entrepreneurs, that's just part of our, like you said, you write books and your wife's like, are you crazy? And like, I know you're a big golfer or whatever, right? So kind of what drives you and, but your careers, what you do, more than 40 hours a week these days, that's part of your life. You can't really separate that. I mean, and actually, we just left, this morning we were at the Terry College of Business, the third speaker series. Coach Kirby was over there, and I was interviewing, that line of like, I had a quick Q&A with him, and it's like, I can't even imagine what's on his plate. I mean, he says, in part of his talk, he said he's always on. There's really no off, but he does take time off, kids and everything else, but his phone is never turned off. And he can get 350 text messages in a given moment when he's recruiting and so forth. But I like that at the end you're talking about the new book coming up of like that balance of
yeah, you have to have some quiet time, and whatever way that comes to you, maybe meditation, it may be prayer, it may be taking a walk, it may be painting small figurines.
I don't even know what it is anymore.
Right, exactly.
What's that?
But it is helpful to find a way to plug that into your life somehow, and that David Lynch, the filmmaker, wrote a book called Catching the Big Fish. And he talks about this sort of quietude or contemplative, meditative states. And he says, it's like fishing. The little fish are at the top of the pond. It's not hard to get those ideas, essentially. But the big ideas, the big fish, are at the bottom of the pond, and you have to find a way to go deeper to get them. And so it's those quiet times, or again, however we get them, that allow us to catch those fish.
Yeah, a lot of times you have those aha moments in those quiet times, whenever, when you just, and it comes to you like, it seems like out of nowhere.
Totally. Recently I had to drive up to Asheville for something, but I was working on an article for a client, and I'm like, how the heck am I going to start this article? I don't even know where to begin.
Right.
And honestly, I got up. It was a 3-hour drive. I was kind of tired, and I took a nap. And of course, there it came.
Not while you were driving, though.
Not while, no, no. But no. Once I got there, and the idea just came whole formed.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Right.
So anyway, there's value in that. So yeah, that's what I'm working on for fun.
Well, thanks for your time. I thought it was
thank you.
very useful, and
I'm sorry I was late.
We'll get it out in a few weeks.
Yep.
Anyway, fortunately, my next meeting is down the street and an hour from now, so I'm pretty sure I can make that on time.
It's 36 minutes, I think.
Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. Just your references to content as a listener, it was just like this is fascinating. And then, so what was the early book? That was
Oh,
on this topic, right?
The Last Folk Hero? Well, the Opening Playbook was the business book about relationship marketing. And really sort of one of the key takeaways is connect with content, but content more broadly, right? It's like, you may not be the one to write the article. You may not, so what? Bring people together around a table over breakfast, or make an introduction, or there are all kinds of ways to bring value. But what is it that you're bringing besides, hey, you need any of what I'm selling right now?
Right, yeah.
No, thank you. Especially when you're opening the relationship, which is the key. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's right. Do you need
We'll do a couple with. We'll just get this camera here.
I do think, though, this whole issue of online and relationships is still
It's
an ongoing one, because it's so easy to
exactly
lose it, to think because you've had an online relationship.
Especially for those people who are introverts or reluctant to have like these. A lot of the people I'm working with, not obviously Michael Hollingsworth, but most of his team.
I like that. You mean?
Yeah, I mean,
No, he's very personal.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
But he's a rarity.
I mean, he's almost a friend.
Yeah.
Well, he is a friend.
He is a friend.
Yeah.
I feel that way, and I know that's true for you.
Yeah.
Because he feels that way.
Let me get some photo ops here. So let me slide the mic right in the front right here, if you don't mind. Yeah. Just stay right where you're at. Okay. I can put that behind you for right now.
Oops. Oh.
We'll do a couple of photos without the headset and then some with,
Okay.
We have options.
Okay.
We got options. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
This down.
Should we look really interested in each other?
Well, first we look this way, because I got some of those while we're on the show. Like,
Yeah.
let me slide this over here.
Yeah, maybe put that down so you can see his face.
Oh, okay.
Just a bit,
Yeah.
And then, okay, and then look this way for a few shots here. Let me get this, since it's so
That out,
clean,
okay.
otherwise I'll get that out of there. Come on. Okay, you got your wallet slided this way too, yeah, that would be good. I thought that would get us.
Your wallet?
Yeah, something, yeah. Michael, look this way, that was okay, perfect. Okay, let me get a couple reenacting this show, so we'll do, looking at each other a little bit here. Okay.
Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, nice. Actually, do that one. That
My headshot is like this. Really, it is.
Yeah.
It looks like I'm punching myself in the head.
Yeah.
That was a good one that you did the first time, though, and you just, like that, yeah. Contemplative, yeah. Okay, so those are the fun shots. Now let's get serious, yeah. Now, and Michael, drop that right there.
Yeah.
Get serious there. Now look into each other's eyes. This is the most awkward part of the whole thing, yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's do the headsets here, whatever, yeah.
Okay.
And then, it should be down there. Sorry, just get that out of the photo for the first one. When we do the on-site shows, let me flip this way. Yeah.
Oh, this way. Okay.
Yeah. We do on-site broadcasts like we just did World Trade. That's awesome. And so we do those. I'm doing the interviewing. They're getting pictures of me, and so we do want that, like, the contact. But I'm thinking the same thing. Like, I'm looking at this person for how long, and we do it in the studio, make you see how long you can stare at each other. So look this way here, perfect. And then Michael, drop this hand off the table. Keep that one on. Yeah. Perfect.
Leave this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
There it is. Okay, and then go ahead and drop both hands. Yeah.
Both hands off?
Right,
Okay.
just give us option to sit up. Everybody sit up straight like your mama told you. There it is. Nice. That's the shot. Okay, then look at each other one more time. The staring contest. All right, and contest is over. Yeah, you won.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Here's your water there. Would you like a water or?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Great job, you guys.